So a while back, the MLB put out their player rankings, where each player ranks at a certain position. And all I'm going to say is the Toronto Blue Jays were pretty disrespected.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. You guys have been killing it lately, actually. You get your podcast, your shorts, your live streams, your videos. We plan to go live on opening day, so make sure you guys tune in for that. As soon as the first pitch happens, we will be live on YouTube, so make sure you go and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the live stream. As well, we'll post on Twitter and everything else that we are live. Shorts will be coming back, so shorts, TikToks, Instagram Reels, they'll all be back as soon as the season gets underway. We plan to kick things off every single game with a game recap for you guys, or most games anyway. Some huge episodes coming. We have a surprise episode for you guys on Monday. I won't say what it is yet because it should be happening, but you never know. So, but a big episode. Then we have, of course, Skylar Peters, Dallin Wilton, closer to the beginning of the season. They're going to join us for hot takes, predictions for the season. It'll be a two-part episode. We're going to get it all out there. Skylar Peters, terrible betting chances again this year. Dal will probably throw some bets at us as well. So those guys will be cooking to go. That's going to be a really fun two episodes for us to do. As well, we might have a couple more guests joining us throughout the offseason, right into the beginning of the year. So it is a jam-packed couple weeks for us. Big episodes, huge episodes. Monday is going to be crazy if that's the case. But Carter, the MLB player rankings came out a while back, and I know, again, there's so much just going on as of late that we never really got to it. Actually, MLB The Show is coming out in a couple weeks, or about a week and a half. They have put out their top players in every team of their rankings. So some guys there's a couple 99s, couple whatever. I want to go over the Blue Jays list because something really interesting. Again, a player getting disrespected on the Toronto Blue Jays. What else is new? But let's start here. This is the one I found, I guess, maybe not, I would say the most interesting, and I want to get your take, okay? This is the top 10 right now catchers. I'm going to go over the list, and then I'm going to ask you what you think of it. William Contreras, Adley Rutschman, Will Smith, Cal Raleigh, JT Realmuto at 5, Yainer Diaz, Gabriel Moreno, Alejandro Kirk at number 8, Sean Murphy, and then Austin Wells. Carter, Kirk or Moreno right now, you get your choice. Who are you more confident in going into the season?
I think it's a close debate, but I got to go with my boy Alejandro Kirk. I'm expecting a big season from the guy. He's coming into his first season where he has the catcher spot as his predominant role. He's going to be the guy that is leading in that opening day. He's going to be the guy getting, I would say, 3/4 of the start at that catcher position. We saw how good Alejandro Kirk can be in 2022. We've seen how hot he is at the start of spring training. Just hit a home run yesterday, which is obviously very nice to see from a guy like Alejandro Kirk, who isn't necessarily known for all those home runs that he is going to be hitting. Hopefully we can get over that 10 mark for the first time. But with Alejandro Kirk, one of the best framers in the game. When you look at Gabriel Moreno, he does some things well as well. He's probably going to have a higher average. He runs a little bit better, has a better arm, things like that. But then you look at Alejandro Kirk, I'm expecting this guy to have a very good season at the plate. Hopefully around a 5 WAR, 5.5 WAR. If he can be around 6, maybe even bump into the top 5 on this rankings by the end of the year, I would not be surprised. Alejandro Kirk is one of those guys that we talk about bounce back seasons. We talk about guys that do not necessarily have great seasons in 2024. Alejandro Kirk wasn't necessarily bad in 2024, but I'm expecting him to get a whole lot better this upcoming.
Yeah, Carter, I'm with you. When I look at, all the catchers on this list, I don't think it's a big gap. I don't think that Alejandro Kirk was disrespected. I think this one's fairly okay with me. And as we go through a bunch of these rankings, you'll see where some guys really don't get the respect they deserve. And I agree with you. I think over Gabriel Moreno, I think I still take Alejandro Kirk. But Carter, I guess let's move on to the relief pitchers. Another interesting one, obviously, to see where Jeff Hoffman places. Number 1, Devin Williams. Number 2, Cade Smith. Ryan Helsley. Emmanuel Clase at 4. Mason Miller at 5. Edwin Uceda at 6. Tanner Scott at 7, Kirby Yates at 8. Jeff Hoffman rolls in at number 9. I don't necessarily know how I feel about this one, just for the simple fact that I haven't seen Jeff Hoffman pitch for the Toronto Blue Jays. And my opinion will probably change throughout the year. But it's nice to see that he made the top 10.
I think this is definitely fair. Jeff Hoffman's been one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball for the last 10 years. I saw somebody do a ranking system on closing pitchers. They had Jeff Hoffman outside the top 20. Doesn't make any sense when the MLB Network has him inside the top 10 right here. But again, there's ranking systems. People are going to have their biases, their shortcomings. It's made me a Yankees fan, made that list. Saw Jeff Hoffman went to the Toronto Blue Jays, threw him down lower. Obviously, for us as well. If his name's not Aaron Judge, even Garrett Cole, a guy that obviously is a very good pitcher. I just in my head, I know that I don't like Garrett Cole. If I was going to make a ranking, that bias might play into my head a little bit as regarding like a division rival. I'm not sure who made that list. I'm not sure who was in charge of making these MLB Network lists. But when you look at Jeff Hoffman, him being inside the top 10 relief pitchers in baseball right now, I don't think that's a hot take whatsoever.
No. Moving on to second baseman. This is where it gets a little bit iffy for me because I don't know how these projections are worked. If you take defense into consideration, Andres Gimenez
They definitely do.
might be up there. But if you're just taking hitting in, he's probably not touching the top 10. But here it is. Number 1, Ketel Marte, Jose Altuve, Marcus Semien, Brandon Donovan, Jazz Chisholm Jr. I was going to get it eventually. Tyler Fitzgerald, Brandon Lowe, Nico Horner, and at number 9, Andres Gimenez, just above Gleyber Torres. Again, this is a tough one for me because Andres Gimenez's bat we have to see more out of than we saw last year. And obviously, first season with the Blue Jays, we'll have to wait and see sort of what develops this year. So I can't necessarily take a ton away from this. I know he's a great defender, but what can he do with the bat is my biggest question. I think as we move forward into the season, we will start to see what he can bring to the table.
Well, and this is a guy that is only 25 years old going into his age 26 season. He is around Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s age. A lot of people don't realize that when they're looking at Andres Gimenez. Hasn't necessarily been around the league for that long. And in 2022, was one of the better players in the AL, finished in 6th in AL MVP voting. Again, he's hitting 297. He has around an 850 OPS. Things have kind of went downhill in the last couple of years. But when you look at how good this guy is defensively, you could probably say that this guy might be the best defensive infielder in the game of baseball. Obviously, Daulton Varsho in the outfield is going to be awesome for us to see if you're a fan of defense, which, I mean, if you're a fan of the Toronto Blue Jays, you've been accustomed to good defense that definitely over the last 2 seasons. That's not going to be where the people's beliefs lie. They're not really going to care about how good of defense Andres Gimenez plays because that's kind of the given when you trade for a guy like Andres Gimenez. It's all going to lead off in the bat. It's all going to roll with that. If you look at Andres Gimenez and that second base position, like Ketel Marte, it's going to be tough to ever play better than a guy like that. But Andres Gimenez, if he goes back to even sort of that 2022 form, this guy could be a top 3 second baseman in the game of baseball with how good he is defensively. Again, the contact is there. He has some of the pieces that you hope to see that he can put together for this upcoming season. But really, if Andres Gimenez puts the bat together with how good he is defensively, the thing kind of same narrative we've had with Daulton Varsho, him having a very good season in 2022 as well. If these guys can figure out their bats, they can be some of the best players in all of baseball.
Carter, and when we look at the first baseman here, this is an interesting one for me because I have slightly different takes than maybe the MLB does. And of course, with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being our first baseman, I probably do. But looking at this, number 1, Freddie Freeman. Number 2, Bryce Harper. Number 3, Matt Olson. Number 4, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Then Yandy Diaz, Wilson Contreras, Christian Walker, Pete Alonso, Nathaniel Lowe, and Paul Goldschmidt rounding out the top 10. I think that's a fair position for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I'm not overly mad at that. Do I necessarily? I think Pete Alonso should be higher. I think that it's a big 4 and then a big drop off after that, Carter. Are you sort of in agreement with me?
I guess you could categorize the top 4 as being in their kind of own category here, but I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is easily top 2 based off what he did last year. And he was first in pretty much all of the rankings when you look at first baseman last year. Freddie Freeman, if you're talking about the reasons, if you're just talking about last season, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the best first baseman in baseball last year. If you're looking at it for the future, I get how you have this Freddie Freeman respect. He's been a very good fit first baseman, one of the league's best first basemen for a very long time. Obviously, he is getting into the middle 30s. So if we're looking at the following season, I think I'm going to be a guy that's picking Vladimir Guerrero Jr. over Freddie Freeman. Maybe there is a little bit of bias there. Freddie Freeman's going to be a lot better defensively. He's going to run the bases a whole lot better than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is. So if you're looking at in totality from a baseball stance, again, there's an argument here. I think Vladdy clears Bryce Harper, though. I think he clears Matt Olson, especially when Matt Olson did not have a very good season in 2024. Still a good season, but for Matt Olson standards, not exactly what you're looking for. And when it comes to the rest of these guys, again, there's things that a lot of these guys do well. Like Christian Walker's a pretty all-around guy. Pete Alonso, you're not paying that guy for his defensive play. Paul Goldschmidt, same thing. And Nathaniel Lowe, not a bad defensive first baseman. I think that's probably why he's ahead of Paul Goldschmidt. But I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr., for me, has to be top 2. Again, I can sort of see it when you look at it. It depends how you're rating this. If you're looking at, the last 3 seasons, there's more of an argument. But it says right now. So right now, I would think you're basing it off the most recent thing that we have seen. And right now, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. should be a top 2 first baseman, if not first.
Yeah, for me, I would say top 3. I am not a Bryce Harper fan. Anybody that's listening to this podcast knows that I'm not a huge Bryce Harper fan. But my top 3 are Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bryce Harper, and Freddie Freeman. Matt Olson is a little bit further down. So I as much as I don't like Bryce Harper, I got to put him in that conversation. I think he's a great player. Don't like him, but great player. And so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. But now, Carter, this is the one that I wanted to get into. And I'm going to give 2 sources here a little bit. So first of all, the MLB top 10s right now, shortstops. Gunnar Henderson, Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, Bobby Witt Jr., Mookie Betts, Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, Elliot De La Cruz, Willie Adames, and Trey Turner. No Bo Bichette. And talking about right now, that's fair. Bo Bichette had a terrible season, riddled with injuries, a whole bunch. So, okay, I guess. Fair enough, sort of. But then MLB The Show, they released their player rankings, what the number on the card is, what their stats are going to be. We haven't seen stats yet, but we've seen what the overalls are for some of the guys, or at least the top 5 to 7 per team, sort of. This is what the Toronto Blue Jays have got. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to 90 overall. Understandable. Probably might go up, honestly. Anthony Santander at 87. I like that. Jeff Hoffman at 86. So 85 is the cap for what they call diamond players and up. Kevin Gausman at an 83. And then at 82, they have Andres Gimenez, Daulton Varsho, and Yimi Garcia. All gold players. Shockingly, actually, that they've given some guys the benefit of the doubt here. But what I don't see again is Bo Bichette. And MLB The Show a while back said how they rank their players is based on the past 3 years. I get Bo Bichette didn't have a great year last year. We all do. But looking back over the past 3 seasons, and you're not going to put Bo Bichette, I don't know what he is. He might not even be a gold. He might be a silver player, or he ended the season on MLB The Show 24 as a bronze player. And I know some of you may not care, and this might not be the conversation that needs to be had, but it's a little bit of disrespect here for a guy that really has had one down year, Carter, and people are losing their minds over Bo Bichette. I don't get it.
Yeah, when they take the last 3 years into consideration, Bo Bichette led the league in hits in 2022. 2023 had an 800 OPS, 20 plus home runs. Again, last year it is what it is, but when you have, again, like, no disrespect to a guy like Yimi Garcia, but you have a guy like that over Bo Bichette. You have Andres Gimenez, again, last 3 years into consideration. That helps him out. Had a good 2022, whatever it is. But I'm still taking Bo Bichette over Andres Gimenez. That might be a little bit of a debate if you're looking at like WAR, but if you're looking at just who means more to a baseball team, I think it has to be Bo Bichette over Andres Gimenez. It's a little bit surprising. Again, it is MLB The Show, so I'm not going to get like crazy mad over this, but it just kind of goes with the narrative. You see it on the top 10 shortstops and right now. Again, right now makes me think they're looking at it from last season, but then why isn't Vladimir Guerrero Jr. higher? So it seems like since 2020, the Blue Jays have been a very disappointing team. They've always kind of gone under expectations. So it seems like everyone's kind of written the Toronto Blue Jays off, which is a spot that I love to be in as a fan, because when we've seen all these expectations, it's always been the Toronto Blue Jays expected to finish top 3 in the AL, top 2 in the AL, whatever it is. Now, the over-under win total, I think, is 78.5 as it stands. I think that's an easy over. And I think it's going to be nice to see this team, be a little bit of an underdog for a change. And let's see how that's going to ignite some of these guys that are coming off of down years in 2024.
So, Carter, I want to keep this going a little bit just on the shortstop talk and stuff like that before we get into some spring training stuff, some updates, how the guys are doing. What are you thinking about it? We'll get into all that, but I do want to come back because I have one more question for you, but I know we got to take a break. So let's take this quick break. We'll be right back. So just continuing on from last segment from what you said, Carter, about Bo Bichette probably should being a top 10 shortstop. When you're looking at this list, and you got the list in front of you, Gunnar Henderson, I'll say it again, Gunnar Henderson, Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, Bobby Witt Jr., Mookie Betts, Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, Elia De La Cruz, Willie Adames, Trey Turner. I, I'm I'm blown away that Bobby Witt Jr. is that low. Um, I think he's a debatable number one.
I think
I
it's
don't
a
know.
clear cut number one. I don't
Yeah,
really think that's a question after the year he had last season. So that's why, again, the right nows aren't really making a whole lot of sense because Bobby Witt could have been AL MVP, was in the top three in AL MVP. How is he not a top three shortstop in the game of baseball? This again doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you're looking at it. Maybe he's projecting a little bit of this into 2025 as well. But I'm not, and when we talk about Bo Bichette not being on here, I'm not saying that he should be even in the top five. I think when you look at Gunnar, Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, especially off of last year, how can you put Bo Bichette over any of those guys? And then again, if you're talking about defense, I think pretty much everyone on this list is probably going to have Bo Bichette on the defensive perspective. But a guy like Willie Adames going into next season, I know if you're going on last year, Willie Adames, pretty much everyone on this list did have a better year than Bo Bichette. Of course, they're going to have a better year than Bo Bichette. But going into this year, I think he's going to be better than Dansby Swanson's on this list. I think he's going to be better than Carlos Correa. I think he's going to be better than Willie Adames. I think he'll be somewhere in that 6, 7, 8 range. At the end of this upcoming season, and might even find a way to be an all-star as well. It wouldn't be the hottest take I think I've ever seen. We're expecting a whole lot of big things from Bo Bichette, and just so excited to see this guy playing the Bo Bichette caliber of baseball that we're so accustomed to seeing from him.
yeah, and I guess with that, I sort of agree with you. Those are some of the guys that I would have picked off this list for Bo Bichette to overtake this season. Uh, let's get into it. Let's get into a little bit of spring training of it all, because we're a bit way through now, right? We're coming up on the season slowly. I guess not how much do you take away from the spring training, Carter, but obviously we've seen the Toronto Blue Jays have spring training success. Now, take away with that what you will, right? They're fourth in the Grapefruit League, sitting at 6-4 right now, and wins, losses, I mean, whatever. Um, but I think you've seen good things so far, and I think that's the biggest thing as Toronto Blue Jays fans to take away from this is there are good things to be taken away.
There's some great things to be taken away. Everyone seems to be hitting right now. It's early on in spring training. I get it. But when you're scoring 13 runs, 6 runs the other day, 10 runs, 7 runs, they've been coming in bunches. There's been a lot of run production early on, and they are playing against high A guys. They're playing against double A guys. They're playing against guys that aren't wrapped up necessarily yet, not throwing the highest feelers that they're going to face. But after last season, again, like you're going to say, oh, yeah, this team was above average WRC plus. When you look at the eye test on this offense for the good majority of the year, this was not that good of an offense. This team struggled in a lot of spots. They struggled in a lot of time when there was runners on base. They struggled pretty much just in any sort of run production, which is when you're looking at the offensive categories. I think 23rd in runs scored. That's not going to be a recipe for success, especially when you're putting that much pressure on a starting rotation, on a bullpen that you expect to be better this season. But it's definitely nice to see whether it's the Toronto Blue Jays prospects or the guys that are going to be carrying the load and playing every single day that are having hot starts to this spring training.
Yeah, Carter. And I wanted to get into a couple of guys, maybe guys that we don't talk about enough or we haven't discussed a ton. Um, and some of this is going to be bad. Some of this is going to be good. Jake Bloss is getting shelled. He is getting absolutely shelled in spring training. Again, what do you take away from that? There's still lots of time. He's got lots of time to develop. I'm not overly worried about that because I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays necessarily need him to be unbelievable this season. So one of the bads to take away. Alan Roden, hat tips to that guy. Holy moly, he has been an absolute stud. Addison Barger, another sort of low spot there, hasn't been what any of us wanted him to be. Again, I know going into this year, me and you talked about Addison Barger and sort of where he placed for you on this team. I don't think it's a question right now. Addison Barger for me is going to play in AAA.
No, I think he has to. It's just for his own confidence, for his own development of his game. Still, again, looks a little bit raw when it comes to technique, but you do have time to progress through AAA. You can have time if you have a hot start, put some pressure on the front office, have the ability to pull you up. But when you're looking at Addison Barger, there's just a lot of things that aren't necessarily going well for him right now. Kind of striking out a little bit too much. Obviously, needs to work on his defensive game. Has an absolute cannon of an arm. So if he can figure it out, whether it's at third base, corner outfield position, there is a way for him to be productive on defense with that arm strength. Pretty fast guy as well. I've always said with Addison Barger, I want to move him to a corner outfield position. I don't know if he's necessarily open to that, But I don't not see a long-term success route for Addison Barger playing third base. Same thing kind of goes with like Aurelvis Martinez in this defensive stuff. Maybe a second baseman. I actually want to see him be a first baseman. Obviously, it's going to depend on how the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stuff shapes out as well. But you do have a backup plan there. Again, when you have 56 errors as a shortstop in like 200 games in my league career when you're Elvis Martinez, it's not going to bode out well. I don't see Addison Barger being that bad defensively, but when you talk about playing bad defense, Addison Barger, unfortunately, unless he is going to work on stuff, which again, AAA, they're going to focus on those mechanics. They're going to focus on that, whether in the big leagues, AAA, AA, you name it. But Addison Barger has a few things that he needs to work on if he wants to be on this Toronto Blue Jays opening day roster, or if he wants to come up to the big leagues at some point throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, talking about some more guys, I know we will talk more in depth on some of these players moving forward, but Alejandro Kirk, everything that we've seen from him is exactly what I want to see from Alejandro Kirk. That big bomb yesterday, great to see. And yeah, I just have no complaints with him. And he's a guy I know going into this, me and you've talked about a ton about being that bounce back. Now that he's secured that solo spot for himself to be the main catcher here, I think he would thrive. And I think he's already showing that he is the Alejandro Kirk that I expected going to this season and maybe doing better than expected. I don't know what to take away quite yet.
I think it has to be better than expected. He is roping the baseball all over the diamond. He is hitting the ball hard, which we have not seen from Alejandro Kirk since 2022. Yeah. When you're a guy just that is built like Alejandro Kirk, he's not meant to be a speedster. He was meant to be a guy that is going to hit line drives, hit the ball hard. He's going to hit gaps, come up in clutch situations, have a very good eye, has a good realm of the strike zone. It's a guy that, again, isn't going to strike out a ton, but you got to lift the ball up if you're Alejandro Kirk. We know what happens if there's a ground ball in the infield. That's, whether it's at somebody or not, it's hit hard or whether it isn't, you're going to have a lot of time to throw Alejandro Kirk out. Where he's going to find his success is when he does hit those line drives, he's hitting the ball into the outfield. And that is exactly what we've seen from Alejandro Kirk so far this spring. I think if you're going to go over like early overreactions or just who has just started out the hottest in Toronto Blue Jays camp, I think that has to be Alejandro Kirk. I think that's the guy that you've seen the most things from, and it's definitely been a nice sight so far early on in spring training.
Yeah, really, really nice to see it from Alejandro Kirk. Carter, I want to get into two more guys, Alek Manoah and Daulton Varsho. I want to talk about those two guys. When we come back, let's take a quick break, get back with those two.
Today's episode is sponsored by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shell varieties. When I go to the gas station, that's slowly becoming one of my go-to snacks. It's very easy to go with a bag of chips or like a Kit Kat or something like that. But again, those aren't very satiating. They aren't going to fill you up, and also very calorie dense. Not lots of nutritional value there. Wonderful Pistachios, the salted kind, I just absolutely love, and that has become my go-to, whether it's been on a road trip or again going to work, whatever it is. Wonderful Pistachios, and we have kind of developed a pretty good relationship over these last few weeks. Another nice thing about Wonderful Pistachios is that they are a complete protein, and they provide all 9 essential amino acids. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
So, Carter, talking about two guys. I want to start here with Alek Manoah, right? A guy that I know I'm excited about. I know Skylar Peters is wearing his jersey out right now with some pride because I think he sees that an Alek Manoah comeback is in the cards. The guy looks good. He looks strong. He looks like he's throwing the ball well. And I think he'll be back earlier than originally expected as well, Carter.
Yeah, it's sort of that same track we've seen with Daulton Varsho. Obviously, we're not expecting Alek Manoah to be ready for opening day coming off of Tommy John, but they were thinking late August, maybe early August. Now, the things that Alek Manoah is saying, the things that we're seeing, we're hoping that it could be even early July, maybe middle of July, somewhere around that All-Star break. If you get him after that All-Star break, some managers will say that's like a trade at the trade deadline. It is in a sense, but I don't like saying that. The guy's already on the team. I'd rather you go out from outside of the organization and really add somebody that, again, you didn't expect to be back. It doesn't really count as an acquisition when you're waiting for them to come back around that time anyway. But this guy, it looks like he's lost, 40, 50 pounds?
He looks
again, like this is when we got that classic, oh, this guy's looked the best he's ever been. He's in the best shape of his life. I think this is actually true with a guy like Alek Manoah. He looks absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it's tough to have all this speculation when you're not seeing him throw, you're not seeing him in spring training games. So there still is a long timetable for a guy like Alek Manoah. But when you talk about Jake Bloss not having good spring training, you talk about Yariel Rodriguez not having the greatest spring training right now. Alek Manoah might be a guy that we have to rely on at some point throughout the season. And this is why that Max Scherzer signing could end up being so big. When you see those two guys struggling, those two depth pieces that would be your plan Bs and plan Cs, it is nice that you have Max Scherzer, you have some of these guys. Again, Alek Manoah coming back later on, that you do have some backup options, whether it is some injury or some success issues with their production.
And Carter, this might be a bold take, and maybe I should save this for our bold takes episode. When Alek Manoah comes back, I think undoubtedly he's the third starter on this team. I think it's still Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios ahead of him. But I think Alek Manoah is really going to bring it. And we're finally, in the next couple of years, going to see what Alek Manoah was meant to be originally, right? Where he had a great season, fell off the map, had injury troubles. Now I think Alek Manoah is going to be back. Also, quick comment here from talking about Kevin Gausman. And here's one from Kevin Gausman. Last spring, I think it was a lot harder to get to 96. He has said multiple times that he feels way, way better this spring training. So great from him as well. Anything on him before we talk a little bit about Daulton Varsho as well?
It's just the Buck Martinez quote that I'm not sure we talked about on the podcast, but Buck Martinez, talking about Kevin Gausman, says that he gained 30 pounds of muscle this offseason. But that's just not true, Buck. Like you can't gain 30 pounds of muscle unless this guy's just heavy on the Relvis Martinez dosage of steroids, I guess. But there's just no way. It's just one of those things. Max Scherzer, he's also said, is in World Series form. I don't know what that means in February, Buck, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. Said Alejandro Kirk is in the best shape of his life. Life might be the only relatively true thing that he said. Kevin Gausman probably did put on muscle, does look very good, obviously. And seeing that he is feeling a lot more comfortable this spring training compared to last spring training is obviously a massive step in the right direction. Kevin Gausman, one of those guys that not really the prime Kevin Gausman season we saw. Not that it was like horrific or anything, but when you look at Kevin Gausman, you look at the underlying numbers, you know that he has more in the tank. The splitter wasn't necessarily on last year. If he, again, get that splitter back to that 2023, 2022 stages where he was, again, top 3 in the league in strikeouts. This is going to be a guy with another bounce back. Again, it seems like we're relying on a lot of bounce backs, which in a sense definitely are. You can't have 8 guys on your team underperform as drastically as they did. But with Kevin Gausman, that's one of those guys that I'm never necessarily going to be worried about unless there is some injury concerns going into the season. You know what this guy's going to bring, and it's the veteran presence that this team needs.
Well, and we talk about how not on point his splitter was, but that was also because he wasn't utilizing his fastball very well either, right? And when you can play that splitter off of a great fastball, that's where you're going to see, everything come, happen. But when you're not utilizing your fastball, then your splitter becomes a pitch that people can absolutely rake and they're going to sit on. So hopefully we see great things from Kevin Gausman this year. We'll have to wait and see throughout spring training a little bit more. Daulton Varsho, let's end things off with Daulton Varsho. Ahead of schedule. I'm very pumped to see what Daulton Varsho can bring. Again, he's getting in at bats right now, which is absurd. Throwing at 120 feet from a guy that goes down with an injury like that and isn't supposed to make opening day. He's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it's almost looking like a 50-50 shot now that he's going to be ready for opening day, which you absolutely love to see. Even if he's not ready for opening day and takes another week or two, that's a lot better than the into April that we're going to see. And also him getting at bats is such a massive thing for him. I think it's not going to be a problem. Daulton Varsho getting back, with the arm, fielding flat balls. He is one of the best, if not the best in the league as an outfielder at doing that. Not worried at all about his defense. It was the offense that I was worried about. When you miss a big portion of spring training, you're not getting those at bats. Definitely implements and has a huge effect on things as well. So it's nice to see that Daulton Varsho is getting those early on at bats and having a lot of success at them as well. Already 2 home runs in this spring training. So any sort of progression that is ahead of schedule, any sort of good news, which we haven't really seemed to be accustomed to over the last few seasons, is definitely going to be something I take in with open arms.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm so pumped. Spring training. I always say I don't really care. It is what it is. We'll see what these guys can bring for the regular season. But right now, I'm pretty excited. And I'm pretty excited for opening day. And hopefully you guys are as well. A lot of you joined the fantasy league. We'll keep you guys up to date on some of our picks as we move into closer towards the draft date as
I
well.
guess we should also officially say that there is no more spots for the fantasy league. I think we
Yeah.
should reach out to the people, make sure they are going to be active, make sure again that they are for sure into this. There might be 1 or 2 spots open up, so make sure you guys are listening to the podcast just in case we do end up switching some things around. But right now, the fantasy league is full. We'll have to get into contact. I know a lot of you guys have already DM'd us on Instagram, maybe tweeted at us. I've seen a lot on Instagram, so continue to do that so we know that you are ready and excited for the fantasy league because we are as well. It's going to be fun, have a little bit of friendly competition with the people that listen to the podcast, just see where the baseball knowledge is at compared to ours. Obviously, there's a lot of luck in fantasy as well. So we're going to have to see who gets lucky, who doesn't. If it goes the way things normally do, I'm going to have 8 injuries to start the season, and Braden's going to somehow pick 4 MVPs in the 15th round.
Some people are just super smart at fantasy. I'm one of those people, I guess. As I say that, I'm going to be finished last. Anyway, have a good one, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow.